walk. So he's not going to be talking about parenting today. He's actually going to be talking about marriage, which I think will be helpful for us all. So if you guys can help me walk up, this is great.
Yes. Hear me? All right. Well, thank you for having me. This is the most intimidating speaking engagement I've ever had. I told my wife that what I was doing, and she didn't even respond. She just looked at me. And so, if you're here today and you are struggling in your marriage, welcome to the club. I've got my ups and downs with my marriage. I'm a therapist. I help people every day, every week, and then I find myself in some of the same pits that everybody finds themselves in. We have a unique opportunity as Christians to keep fighting and putting marriage as something that is not for our own pleasure, but is about our relationship with God. And when you have that focus, what I'm talking about becomes a lot easier. Okay, so, marriage, you start out going, I'm going to please my partner. I'm going to be the best wife or the best husband that I can be. And then quickly, without even realizing it, you go, I've got to make sure that I get mine. I've got to make sure that I'm protecting myself. I've got to make sure that I'm okay, even though I got to make sure that they're okay. And then you have kids, and the kids get put first. And most of you think that that's healthy and right and good, and I get it. But my first message today is something I hope everybody walks away with, okay? And I call it the hierarchy, okay? And I teach it in the parenting group. And when you think of this hierarchy, you can problem solve better. You can put things into perspective. And fixing a marriage that isn't going in the direction that you want it to go, or is in a slump, or is like really bad, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't think that I can be in this. It starts with perspective. And the hierarchy is God, and then self, not marriage. God, self, marriage, then your kids. And I know that's hard. I see some brand new babies, and some moms are probably sitting here going, yeah, right. Of course I got to put my kid first. And I know that in the beginning you've got to put the time, the effort, and the energy. You've got to keep this child alive, and you've got to love them, and you've got to set everything else up. But when you're taking a look at the focus, okay, God, self, and it's not self in a selfish way. It's, am I aligned? Am I focusing on my relationship with God? It's not, am I getting everything that I need that feels good, that instant gratification stuff? And so, God, self, then the marriage. What can I do in the marriage? Now, the bummer about a marriage is you only have some control, right? You can only do your end of things, and we men often fail. We struggle to walk alongside the way that we're supposed to walk alongside. And as humans, we all do. Okay? But you guys can only do your end of things. And so again, this is how important I think this is. God, self, then the marriage, then your kids. Now, tell me if any of these sound familiar. I wrote down some toxic dynamics that come into the office, come into our center. The one is, my husband is not acting like a leader, not the spiritual leader that he should be. He's not the moral leader that I want him to be. He's making decisions that of course he shouldn't be making. The chicken or the egg resentments, right? You resent them, they resent you, nobody knows where the resentment started, and you feel like if you could just figure out where it started and who was first at fault, maybe you could unravel everything and let it go. Anybody relate to something like that? And then the no intimacy. Well, of course there's no intimacy because you don't take care of me emotionally. And then I can't respect my partner I'm not going to leave them because I know I can't leave them, but I can't respect them as long as they're doing blank, blank, blank. Or because they did this thing that they aren't truly repentant for. The tit for tat cycle. So many couples come in and when they say out loud what's got the marriage stuck, they start laughing. And that's those tit for tat cycles is actually not important, right? And when you have that hierarchy in place, and you really step back and think about that hierarchy, it's hard to get into the tit for tat cycles. I have to protect my child. My marriage would be good if I didn't have to keep protecting my child issue. This one I call the lazy acceptance of the roommate relationship. Right? And that's when you've just gotten into saying you like each other enough, but it's not a marriage. And that often happens when you get really, really, really busy, right? Anybody got like more things to do than they can stand? Okay, so raise your hand high. Every one of you with your hands up, I'm going to give you a message that keeps coming up in my reading of the Bible and in my life group last night and in church last week. Slow down. Okay, there's so many messages in the Bible that tell us to slow down, and right now we live in this society, especially around here, where you have to have your kids in certain things, and then you got to do this and that, and then you've got to get to church for Mops, and then after Mops you've got to get to that one thing that's going to make sure that your child is set up for school, and then you've got to take care of your husband's business, and then you've got to take care of your business that you started, and you've got to make time for friends, and then you've got to get to the beach because it's hot right now, right? And it's like all of this stuff, and if you slow down, sacrifice some of this stuff, you have time for the marriage. You have time to think about the marriage and God and some of the things, right? Most of that stuff that you feel so pressured to have and do isn't necessary. You think you had a hand up? Oh, okay. The last one is the constant crisis dynamic. So many marriages are struggling right now because they have financial crisis, and then when their financial crisis is over, there's the pandemic and somebody who got sick, and then somebody who passed away, and then you've got the giant house leak, and then you've got the friend who's not doing well over here, and then your marriage is in crisis, but you can't even focus on that because of all the other crises going on. And right now, during this time, that's the one that I think a lot of us find ourselves in that. And that's hard. That dynamic is hard to work with people on because the crises are crises. And to get somebody to realize that all this time and effort you're putting into trying to solve the crisis isn't working, so you might as well stop, is kind of difficult. I have this saying that I teach to parents, I teach to couples, and it's, if it's not working, stop. Okay, I'm not that smart. I have like really simple messages. If it's not working, just stop. Now, you'll notice I didn't say, if it's not working, stop, replace it with something, read a book, and like fix everything. It's just, if it's not working, stop, leave the blank, leave the hole. Let the crisis be for right now. Compartmentalize, put it aside. You don't have to live through your crises in your marriage. Your marriage doesn't have to be focused on everything that's going on. You got a problem with your child? No, your marriage shouldn't all be wrapped around the issues with your child. Okay. That brings me to this thing that I teach people. It's called the 90-10 rule. And I teach it to parents, but it applies to marriages in a very real way. And the 90-10 rule is if you spend 90% of your time on surfacey, not important, like those things that deep relationships aren't supposed to be about, fun, it doesn't matter. If you spend 90% of your time there, and you only allow 10% of the time to be on the deep stuff, the hard stuff, the wrestling stuff, when you address issues during that 10%, it's going to be powerful. And oddly enough, that 90% where you feel like you're ignoring stuff, and at first, if you're one of those people who's got to figure it out, and you go home and you say, my husband doesn't have deep conversations. You gotta have some deep conversations with me, and we gotta figure out the problem over here, and we gotta keep talking about it. If you, again, slow down, just spend 10% of your time, engagement, not of your time, your relationship, 10% of your relationship, figuring out the hard stuff, and you put 90% into just, we're loosey-goosey. You're gonna get more done. You're going to solve more issues together. And you're going to be able to let go of the things that you cannot resolve. That's another issue. Is anybody a fixer here? Yeah. Okay, we fixers are the cause of a lot of problems in our relationship. Okay? Have you ever noticed that when you try to resolve issues with your partner, you kind of like get to that point where it's resolved, and then like 2 weeks later, it's not resolved anymore, and you're going, but we had this agreement, like we figured this out, why did we revert? Anybody experience that ever? It's terrible, right? Most, and this is going to be disheartening for some of you, most of those disagreements, most of those things that you don't see eye to eye on in your marriage are not going to get resolved. You've got to find a way to love each other and love on each other, even though it's not resolved. Now, I know there are some things that have to be resolved, but if you really step back, you put into perspective the hierarchy, you ask yourself truly what's important. What's important for my walk with God? What's important for my marriage's walk with God? What is important for my children's walk with God? What is important so that we can find joy and contentment? And all of a sudden you go, wait a second, things weren't as important as I thought. And most things aren't as important as we think that they are. They're just not. And I'm the worst. Man, I will stick to something, and I know that I'm right. I still know that I'm right on almost everything. And then I have to realize, but I'm right about something from my point of view, and it actually doesn't matter. And if we go in this direction that my wife wants us to go, like our lives aren't going to change. In fact, it's usually not even going to be that uncomfortable. Oh, but man, it's hard for me to let go. And so a lot of times, the first step, after you put things in that hierarchy, the first step is to ask yourself, all these things that I'm holding inside that are keeping me stuck, right? We can't get our partners unstuck. Okay? You guys can get unstuck today, before you leave here. But the first thing to ask yourself is, what am I holding on to that I don't need to be? Some things you need to hold on to. Some things, you know what, it is, you're right. You've got to keep fighting for it in the marriage. But there's a lot of things that you can let go of, like right now, because it's not important. And it's hard. It's really hard to let go. So you have to do it every single day. If you find yourself in a difficult marriage right now, you're going to bed. Has anybody ever heard that whole don't go to bed angry thing? I actually believe there's a passage in the Bible that refers to it, and I totally get it. And I think the spirit of that passage in the Bible is that the next day, we have got to be able to put the same amount of effort in as we did during the days that we weren't angry or that we weren't stuck. Every day we have to make a new commitment to root our marriage in God, to root our marriage in what's healthy, to put our effort in even if our partner can't right now. And that comes to another really important, I think, mindset. Your marriage is in a season. If you're struggling right now, your marriage is in a season. I promise, if you ask for help, if you keep fighting, if you keep turning to God, I promise it will only be a season. There will be another season. Now, I don't know if the next season is going to be more difficult, but I know that this season is going to end. And if I know that my marriage, my relationships, my life is a series of seasons, that gives me hope, because each season I get to start new. Now that's the mindset we've got to have each day, because I have to relentlessly pursue my marriage. I have to relentlessly pursue my marriage even when I really, really don't feel like it and I really, really don't want to. I think a lot of us fall victim to responding in marriage based on how we're feeling in the moment, right? We're reacting. We feel hurt. We feel neglected. Or we feel like something's unjust, like things aren't equal. And then we react to that, right? We know we gotta love, and we know we gotta be good parents, and we know we gotta be a good spouse, but then we can't help ourselves from reacting. Go into marriage each day with a plan. Follow your plan, not your feelings. Okay? And stick out that plan for a while. And it's kind of wild because when I stick to a plan and I really, really don't want to, things begin to change anyways without me realizing it. When I can stick to a plan when it comes to, let's just say, working out, and I don't just work out because I feel like it, I do really well. I can get fit and I can feel good every day. When I work out because I feel like it, it's like get the dad bod going, you know? Now, when I go into my marriage with a plan and I train like I would train my body, and that's a message that we've been getting at my church a lot right now is, for your faith, you train relentlessly. Well, you got to train for your marriage each day too. You got to keep putting in the work, regardless of whether or not you feel like it. Does that make sense? Does that feel okay? Being in love, okay? Being in love is a decision that must be made daily. For me, I have to sometimes make that decision several times a day. We think about being in love as something that happens to us, right? And it did. It happened to you, hopefully, like when you met your spouse, you just got hit with that love bug and you were really excited and you went on dates and then you got married and you had kids. But by the time to have a healthy marriage, you have to make a decision often. Sometimes you can't feel the love. You have to wake up, look in the mirror and say, okay, I decide that I am going to love Brandon today. And that's hard for my wife often. I know. Okay? And I tell her, I gotta, come on, babe, you can do it today. You got this. But you see, we have to decide every day, sometimes multiple times a day, that I'm going to love my spouse. Now, I'm saying love my spouse. What I actually mean is I'm going to love on my spouse. I'm going to be in love with my spouse. Has anybody ever heard that whole thing? I'm sure you all heard this. I love them, but I'm not in love with them. What a cop-out. Give me a break. That's two people who aren't choosing to do the work. They're not making that decision each day. It is not my job to just love my spouse. It's my job to be in love with her. It's my job to honor her, to do the work. Do the work regardless of whether or not I think she's doing the work. And I'm going to let you know something. If you don't think your spouse is doing the work, they don't agree with you. Okay, sorry. Just don't. And they're on the other end coming into my office going, they're not doing anything. They only do what they want to do. They think that this is helping me and this is how they love me, right? Now, this is how they love me brings me to a book I bet almost every one of you have read. Anybody know what I'm about to say? The 5 Love Languages. Great book, feels good to read it. It still hasn't helped anybody who's actually struggling in their marriage. And here's why. We all know how usually to love on our spouse. And I figured that out in the first week. I knew how to love on my spouse in the first week. That's how I pulled her. That's how I got her to marry me. But you see, my resentments get in the way now. My judgments get in the way now. The fact that I'm not focused enough on rooting my marriage in God, and I'm more focused on what my marriage is supposed to look like, and what I'm supposed to get out of the marriage, is getting in the way of my decision to love on her in the ways that I know she feels love. Right? And so, I think the 5 love languages gives us, it feels good to read because it kind of puts some really great words. It organizes some thoughts and things that we already know. But where I want to bridge the gap for you is take that knowledge, and even though you don't want to, decide to do it each day. And don't do it for your spouse. Do not love on your spouse for your spouse. Do not love on your spouse because your girlfriends are telling you, come on, just stick it out. Don't do it for your children even. Okay, because that's not going to last very long. You relentlessly pursue your spouse and love on your spouse because it's building another relationship and a closer relationship for you to God. Even if my wife rejects me, even if my spouse rejects all my loving on her, if I'm doing it not for her, but for God, I can take that rejection and be okay. I can take that rejection and make it a conversation between me and God rather than a resentment that builds and ruins my marriage and ruins my children and ruins my life. Expectations. Anybody have expectations of their husband?
I did. And I was by eating when you said that.
Expectations, man, they're rooted in fantasy. You know that? They are. You all have young children. I have this fantasy right now that my daughter, she's 2.5, I have this fantasy that my daughter is going to grow up to be a chef and cook with me because I'm a therapist and I love cooking, and I even had a little business in that one day. And she's going to surf. She's going to get up at 4:30 every morning with me, and she's going to surf with me, and she's going to be really good. She's going to be on the World Surf Tour someday. It's my fantasy, right? I don't know if it's going to happen. This fantasy is so vivid for me that I wrote a children's cookbook called Allie the Surfer Chef. Ridiculous. My marriage fantasy was that it was going to be so easy to wake up every day and be the man that I'm supposed to be. My marriage fantasy is that she's going to adore me so much that she's just going to want to take care of me. And then when we decided that she's going to be a stay-at-home mom, I had a lot of fantasies about what that was going to look like, right? Because she's going to have so much time. And oh man, that fantasy did not come true for me, and your fantasies aren't going to come true. And you know what? My fantasies led to expectations of my wife that I didn't even realize became expectations. And those expectations became resentments. And sometimes they still do. And tomorrow I'm going to have to wake up and relentlessly pursue my marriage. I'm going to have to work on my resentments and my expectations and my fantasies, because our fantasies are our fantasies. They are not God's will for us. And when we hold on to those fantasies, we get stuck. And we get angry. And we start thinking, man, this isn't fair. This isn't right. I wrote down the compromise. Has anybody ever been to a therapist and they started talking to you about compromising? Yeah? Okay. Tell your therapist I'm sorry for saying this then. I believe that compromise often, if not almost always, becomes a seed for resentment. And it's kind of funny, right? Because we've all heard that saying, like, if you come to a compromise, just two people walk away unhappy, right? And I don't believe in helping people find compromise because I'm not a lawyer. Okay? She's not there right now, but there's a lawyer over here. She can help you guys compromise. Okay? But you see, I'm in the relationship business, and so I want us, and I want people, when you don't get your way and you can't convince your partner of something, I want you to figure out how to love them anyways, how to love on them anyways, how to move on and put things into perspective by taking a look at the hierarchy. Okay? Now, in a healthy marriage, you maintain your boundaries without anger, chaos, and insanity. Now, if I have healthy boundaries in my marriage, guess what? I can protect myself. I don't have to become resentful and angry because I've got the boundaries. My wife can't make me do anything unhealthy. If I make a decision about the person I want to be in Christ, and I behave that way, regardless of my spouse, then even if my spouse is behaving in a way or making decisions that I don't like, I stay grounded and I stay rooted and I know this is a season and I trust God and I still pursue that relationship relentlessly. That's hard, right? That messes with our justice minds. Before you set boundaries in your marriage, okay, and I want you all to maybe one day talk about the boundaries that you should be setting if you don't have healthy boundaries in your marriage. But before you set boundaries, before you even walk out of here today, and I already said this earlier, I want you to ask yourself, those issues that I think I either need to set boundaries on or I need to get my spouse to change, I want you to ask yourself, how important is this actually to my relationship with God, to the marriage's relationship with God, and to my life, right? And to my kids? How important is this actually? Now, the last thing I wanted to quickly go over, how am I doing on time? I'm doing okay? Okay. This question came up, and I hope you guys don't chase me out of here after asking this. Does God actually care if I'm happy in my marriage? Isn't that a wild question? And I don't know. Does anybody know? Does God actually care if you are happy in your marriage? Go ahead.
I don't think so.
Yeah?
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay. Anybody else?
I've heard that marriage is to make you happy, it's to make you holy. I don't know
Okay.
the answer to it.
So maybe not.
Maybe.
Right? We get this message from the Bible that, hey, God does want us to be happy even though this is an imperfect world and our eyes on the prize at the end, but then, right, it's like mismatched, but actually he just wants a relationship with us, and it gets confusing, right? But does God actually want us to be happy in our marriage? I think the answer is yes, but. Yes, he does, but what he actually wants for us is for us to live in his will. What he actually wants for us is to find joy and contentment in spite of our really difficult seasons in our marriage. What he wants for us is to keep asking, who do I want to be in spite of my marriage, for my marriage? Okay. Now when I say in spite of, I don't mean the connection to God. What I mean is in spite of that connection that feels really distant, difficult, and terrible. And then he wants you to relentlessly seek him out. God wants you to relentlessly seek him out in your marriage. So does he want you to be happy? Yeah, of course. And I don't know this for sure, but I kind of, when I imagine it, I kind of think that God cares, but he's got this whole host of other kind of things that he really, really cares about. And when those get in line, he simply knows that we will be content and joyful and happy in our marriage. Right? So I think the happiness, he knows, is a result of the decisions we make when things are difficult and when things are going well. You guys are not alone. You're not alone. I love seeing that you guys are here. And I don't know the dynamics of this group. I was sitting over here and everybody's talking and I've heard various people kind of connect. And if you are struggling in your marriage right now, first shift your attitude. Make a commitment to, remember the 90-10 rule. Make a commitment to go home, root it differently, have a different mentality. Start out in the 90% that's not supposed to be the issues. Start out reminding yourself that you're going to relentlessly pursue the marriage and God. And then go from there. Something Shannon said that you guys wanted to hear about is, well, how do you have fun now, right? We've got this pandemic, people are going through a bunch of problems. All of you have newborn kids and older kids and medium-aged kids, whatever you have, and you've got this, oh my gosh, we're not having fun. Everything's just kind of difficult right now. And I was thinking a lot about that question. And I decided I don't know how to tell you how to have fun. I only know what I can do to have fun with somebody. I can have fun alone, but when I'm living in resentment, to have fun with my spouse, with my wife, is difficult. And I think that the only way to kind of just turn that off is to let go for a moment. We all think of letting go as something that you do for the long run forever. Let go for an hour. Let go of all the resentments for an hour and just have fun. Do something that gets you distracted. Okay? If you are on the go, if you are always in flux and in difficult conversations, just take a vacation. I don't mean spend money and take a vacation. Take an hour vacation with your spouse. Agree to turn everything off and do something silly. Silly. Not just fun, goofy. I'm a goofball. I'm talking really goofy. Some weird dance moves or something. And I'm being serious about this, okay? Try it. Force your husband when you get home. Maybe this weekend. Just for 1 hour, he's got to do whatever you want. You make it as goofy and silly and awkward as possible. And the reason it's going to distract you for at least a moment, if we can get distracted and get joyful for little moments, then we can build on it. Even if you can only do it for 5 minutes, guess what? You can build on it now. Next weekend, you can do it maybe for 10 minutes. And don't give up. Please never give up on your marriage. Appreciate you letting me speak here today. Thank you. Anybody have questions?
We have time for
Comments?
questions and answers if anybody has.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm the one in the marriage that doesn't try and I know I care and I love, but I know my husband will touch and feel and all the things. And I care about those things, but my mind is a million things every day, all the time. And so I think my question to you is what are some suggestions you can give to think you're talking about 9-10, there were 10 things, and I'm trying to put it in perspective for you, how can I be more thoughtful to show appreciation, show care?
Yeah.
How do you I guess my question is more
So, okay, if I hear you, I think you're saying that he's affectionate, and you struggle with affection.
not that I struggle, it's just
Don't think to do it?
I don't think about little things that I know he's so thoughtful.
Yeah.
I'm more of the practical getting everything done, keeping things moving, and it's
Okay, so I'll respond in 2 ways. Number one, awesome. You guys have a match. Right? You're not the exact same. Appreciate him for that. Voice that often to him. And appreciate yourself. You just told me that you take care of the things and you're getting everything done, and man, we need that. And so lighten up on yourself, first of all. Don't go out there. I'm not going to give you some huge way for you to become more focused on being affectionate. But I'll tell you this. Plan with him. Get the communication line open. Talk to him. Say, hey, this is something I actually want to do more of. What do you think? How do you think we can go there? And that's going to go a long way, right? Right there. Now you're aware and he's aware. And if you guys have the kind of marriage it sounds like you have, it's going to improve. But don't think of it as some something that you have to change now, and if you don't, you're not doing your due in the marriage. But talk about it. Get that conversation going with him. Does that help at all?
Yeah, actually, that's huge. I never even thought to tell him, like, I care more to do more, you know, and I think that would be huge for him. He
That's
was
great.
hearing me say that.
Yeah.
It would be very, like, moving for him. Sweet.
Absolutely. Somebody else? Let's go here, and then there.
All right, so I don't know if this is like falling into the expectations category, but I feel like I treat my husband sometimes like I'm like owed for him to come home and help me. Like
Yeah.
it's like, well, I deserve this, and like, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
don't know, like I do try to show gratitude as much as possible, but like how can I feel like it's not the right mindset for me to have
Yeah.
that like, oh, I'm owed for you to come home
Yeah.
and drop everything and then help me. you
Yeah.
know? So how can I like shift that mindset, I guess?
First of all, you're not alone, and you're not wrong. Okay, and I won't say that you're owed. Okay, we don't owe anybody anything we're not owed. We are flawed human beings trying to make this marriage, this connection work, and then we're trying to raise God-loving kids in the midst of it. And it's overwhelming, and I don't know if your husband's working and then coming home, or if there's that dynamic where you're going, hey, help me out, and he's going, you know what I've done all day, and then you guys are kind of missing each other. But if you can get in the mindset of, you know what, I may not be owed, even if I think that I'm owed. I need help right now because I'm in a bad way. Right? Hey, honey, I know you've been at work all day. I'm really overwhelmed right now. I would like some help. Okay? I think that how you approach it, even if you're feeling like this dude owes me, okay, just think about, again, when I think about the fact that my marriage is not for me, okay, and I get caught up in this, oh my gosh, I'm not appreciated. You know how hard I work and how many hours I work and how much I have to do to keep this family afloat, and then you know, nobody's thanking me ever. And I gotta remember, no, I'm doing all this for God. I'm not building all this for my own gain, even though sometimes I fall into that. My role, my job, is to pass on the word to others, is to build my connection to God. And I fail at that, but when I get selfish, when I think, do you know how hard I've worked? Then I want appreciation, and I want somebody to not just acknowledge me, but take the baton, so to speak. Now here's what's weird. If you shift that mindset, if you work on shifting that mindset, he's going to be inspired to help you more often. Okay? It's kind of weird. Right here.
Someone else first.
Oh, here, okay.
I recently heard a message that every single night pray to forgive your husband. Every single night before I go to bed, I pray so you wake up, clear mind, clear heart, no
Yeah.
resentment in your heart. Forgive my husband. So every morning I wake up and he's forgiven, he's clear, right? So how do you balance between I forgive you for everything, so therefore I'm not going to bring up anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's things I want to communicate to you that are bothering me.
Ah.
Are they worth bringing up, or do you just forget in that moment?
Okay.
That's what I
I
struggle
think
with.
first we need to take a look at what forgiving is. Okay? If I forgive you for you, I'm not going to stay in that forgiveness for very long. If I forgive you because I'm trying to forget about the hurt or the issues going on, I've missed the whole point of forgiveness. I believe that forgiveness is not about that person, it is about my relationship to God and me being able to be the person that I want to be. Okay? I forgive you isn't even because you deserve it. Now, I've heard that message too, right? Every night, forgive your spouse. And my fear is that it becomes a platitude, not something that's actually happening. So in my experience, reaching that point of forgiveness takes a long time. I'm going to be honest, I can't do it every night because sometimes it takes me 10 months to get there. But you know what I can do every night and every morning? I can choose to compartmentalize, set aside my resentments and my issues. I can pick a healthy time to talk about the issues. I can ask myself, am I having an insane conversation? Insane conversations are the ones you have over and over again, expecting a different result. Right? And the problem is we do that because we're hoping this time I'm going to change their mind. Sometimes, some of those discussions might be those things that you just are going to go unresolved, and you got to let life play out. Some of them you might have to ask for help. You might need somebody to step in and help you. Okay? But instead of going to bed saying, I'm going to forgive, I'm going to love on my imperfect husband. I'm going to remember to put in line the purpose of this relationship. And if I need to ask a therapist for help, if I need to do something morally different because I've got to go around him and he was going to stop me, and okay, do that. Figure everything else out in its place and in its time. Ask yourself, though, are my issues about morality or are they about comfort? Are my issues about the values that we've agreed we're keeping in this home? Or are they about something of the flesh? And sometimes that puts into perspective whether or not we should keep having the insane conversations. Now, who's had an insane conversation before? Okay. Raise your hand if you had that insane conversation over and over again and then it eventually finally worked. You did? Oh, you are 1 in a million. Kudos to you. You see, only one person put their hand up though. It almost never works, and you're wasting your time. You're wasting your efforts. Okay? I don't know how many minutes I have left on this earth, but I've begun to think about what I'm doing with my minutes. And I don't want to waste my minutes on insane conversations and on issues that are not going to be resolved. I do sometimes, but I don't want to. And tomorrow I'm going to do a better job of it. Okay, does that help at all with your question? Yeah, okay.
Is there another question? Anybody? No. I was wondering if you could just speak in a little bit to marriage and the aftermath of COVID. So specifically, like, I had a husband who was working nonstop. He was never home. He got very used to that, and we missed him. But then COVID brought him home, which was wonderful. Now he's back to work, and I'm totally atrophied as a parent. I'm like Natalia, like always doing stuff, don't know how to stop.
Yeah.
And it's almost like there's a lot of pressure on the relationship. There was a lot of pressure at first to have a relationship because he was home. And now it's back to like, well, now we're juggling our time again. And I don't know, I'm just asking a broad question if you have any.
Okay, so I think I can address it. So we've come into times that nobody we know has experienced. I mean, other generations have had wild things happen. And we've got a dynamic where people came home and like actually had to be with each other for 2 years when they didn't before. Roles have switched, finances. Some people have way more finances, some people have way less finances. We don't have daycare in the same way, we don't have schooling in the same way. And then we start to, the other is, man, it's really on highlight what our morals, our values, our political thoughts, or, people are talking about that more than ever as a couple. And so there's so many opportunities to get into the muck. There's so many opportunities to feel like something changed that you didn't want it to change, and then you're afraid for the next change. There's so many opportunities to just be exhausted. Right? A lot of us are just exhausted right now. I think that's what I hear you're saying, is you're exhausted, the dynamics keep changing, you don't know what's going to be over here, and you remember how it was, and if you're like most of us, there's like some really good things that have come out of the last 2 years and some really bad things that have come out of the last 2 years. And as we find ourselves in these new times, we've got to be flexible. We've got to be patient. We've got to not always talk about the stuff. Okay? We've got to be able to function without a plan. Okay? I'm not saying don't have a plan. It's right? I just contradicted myself earlier. I'm like, have a plan. And I'm saying, don't have a plan. No, have a plan for your marriage, but don't keep trying to plan the stuff that we can't plan for. Don't keep trying to control the things that you don't control. If you don't have control over it, just let it go and know that, hey, you know what? It might be an uncomfortable moment or two, but you will get through it. It's really hard when you're raising kids, right? If you all are parents, and so you think that every single decision you make as a couple is going to like make or break your child. I get that, but you're wrong. I mean, you're just wrong. It's a series of decisions. It's a series of how you behave and whether or not you show joy and contentment. It's the overall decisions. And so remember right now that things may be very different next week. Right now is just right now. Right now our goal is to strengthen our relationship to God, model for our kids that no matter what happens, we can find happiness. We can be kind. And when we're exhausted, where do we draw strength from? Not our spouse, you guys. Not our spouse. Not yourself. Sometimes you can't take a nap when you really, really want to take a nap. You got to draw that strength from God and just know that, hey, this is going to be a tough moment. Did I speak to that okay? Anybody else? Any questions or comments? Yeah.
So since I quit my job, I became a stay-at-home mom. And now I have 2 boys, 4 and 2. And I feel like I never really got the respect of a stay-at-home mom since then. So I'm just curious, still to this day, I mean, I've just done it all. And he works full-time, great provider, amazing, but our parenting roles are different, styles are different, and we just lack that teamwork.
Okay.
So I still am trying to get that, and just wondering how.
Okay. Man, I should have stopped before you. Okay.
Maybe this is not your
Confession time real quick. I'm that dude sometimes. I'm that guy that does not appreciate my wife enough for being a stay-at-home mom. And getting wrapped up in the worldly things is my problem. Getting wrapped up in how hard it is to provide. Getting wrapped up in my exhaustion. And not really taking a moment to see how amazing it is that my wife is doing what she's doing is what's getting in my way. So part of this, the problem is your husband has to realize that there's some work to be done. Okay? Now, what happens is the resentment's built, right? Because the wife's going, do you not see what I'm doing? And don't you understand that I'm the main parent? So can't you just get in line because I know what I'm doing? And can you imagine being in my house? I teach parents. And then the only person I don't get to teach is my wife. And then my wife has to teach me. And you know what? For yourself, what you can do is you can work on not resenting, being patient, and knowing that you got to love on him, and that the endless pursuit of God, the endless pursuit of the marriage, will most likely result in you guys being able to have a discussion. Now, if you can't get there, ask for help. If you're having that insane, for me and my wife for a long time, it's like she's trying to tell me something. I'm going, no, you need to know this. You need to understand, right? And so sometimes, even if you're a therapist, you got to take a step back, take a break, ask for help. Okay? You got to know when to bring things up. When's a good moment, right? If my daughter has been difficult all day, that is not the time for me to come home and talk. I work really late, so I like to come home and have the hard conversations after I've been working all day and my wife just wants to go to bed. Brilliant of me, right? Brilliant of me. Figured out recently. I need to have the conversations after she reads the Bible in the morning after I just worked out. And that's only like a 10-minute period, so I only have 10 minutes each day to address anything that I really want to address. So figure out when good times are to have the discussion. Don't do it in crisis. Don't do it when he's exhausted. Don't do it when you're exhausted. And then another thought just came to me as I was talking. Pursue couples that are going to pour into you and him in a way that's healthy and good and right. And I really believe in community, and I think that's a big one. And that's something. Look, my wife is my social coordinator, and if you guys are probably some of your husband's social coordinators, because I just don't do it. So you have some power, right? You can get some couples and people and events going that just put you in the presence of good people. I wish I had more than that for you. I'll say this. You're amazing. You're a hero. And I will pray that this weekend your husband recognizes that. And at the same time, I'm going to be praying that I remember to recognize my wife for that. Thank you for that question. Yeah.
So, say you're having, not an insane argument, but your husband brings up something that is probably important to the wife, but how he says it hurts her feelings. So that happens with us, that I have very high expectations. He means them very well, but he can't always say the perfect thing. But when he's trying to tell me something that I've done wrong, but if he says it in a way that hurts my feelings, I'm like, stop right there. Like, you need to address my feelings first, and then we can continue.
What does he say? No, it's not that that's wrong. If it works, it's right.
No, it doesn't always.
It doesn't work. Okay.
I think you should go there.
So I think that often we fall victim to addressing the feelings aspect with the issue aspect. And a lot of times we've got to separate it, right? Just knock out of the park the issue and, get in prayer, kind of think about why or how you're affected. If he was speaking poorly to you, wait for that healthy and good moment to address that, right? So it might be, you go home tonight and he says, what have you been doing? Why didn't you? And you're going, oh my gosh, that hurts so much inside. And you just say, hey, let me think about that. All right, let me hear what you got. Even inside you're dying and you're angry and you're hurt. And then find that moment. Not right there. Find that moment and say, hey, can I talk to you about something? Okay? And then, in that moment, you're not telling him that he should have known what to do and how to speak, or that he's so awful and wrong. You say, hey, look, I'm really sensitive. I shouldn't feel this way. But could you bring these things to me in this way? And then you put it in a little box, you tell him exactly what to do. Not because you're supposed to, but because you're asking. You're humbling yourself enough to ask for a different way. And then he's going to do it for a little while, and then he's going to fail again, and then you repeat it. Now, if it is so hurtful, though, because I don't know the nature of how he's really coming at you, but if it's so hurtful that you need help, sometimes you're not going to get through to him. It might be that you guys are ready to ask for help. Okay? So there does come a point with some of these things that you can't just keep taking it, and you've got to set boundaries, right? You might have to say, we can't have a conversation because of the way you're coming at me, and we get help, but right now I can't hear this because I'm not going to allow you to speak to me this way. And that's okay to say that. That boundary is okay, by the way. It's probably a sign that it's time to ask for help. Does that make sense? Did I answer that sufficiently for you? Yeah. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of conversation around forgiveness and forgiving your husband. But at what point does it become enabling?
Okay. What do you mean there's a lot of talk about forgiveness?
Well, I mean, we've had conversations about, forgiving and forgiving, and that, I don't know, I feel like, maybe this is like the feminist in me, but at one point, when does it become, I'm enabling this behavior and not expecting more of it, even though I'm going to give that and that?
Okay. So earlier I said, I don't know how to forgive each day and keep forgiving. That's something that's between me and God. So now I can only assume that you're talking about something moral or something to do with values.
I mean, this actually was something, because I had really high expectations, and when you said resentments, I'm like, oh yeah, I had really high resentment too. It's just, I was thinking back about, and I don't know, it's something that got a little triggered in me, thinking, at one point, does it become, I'm just forgiving without actually setting those expectations for somebody else to enabling that behavior, and when am I the problem?
How about you stop setting expectations, you stop forgiving right now, you get real with yourself about what's actually important. Now, I don't know what you're speaking to, so this issue might be something that you don't want to enable, right? We don't want to enable drinking too much. We don't want to enable any type of abuse. We don't want to enable any amoral behavior in a marriage. Right? You don't make that okay, you don't make that a possibility, right? When I enable, I help you do the wrong thing that you're doing. Okay? Now, if it's outside of the value issues and the moral issues, then we got to ask ourselves, well, is this important, and is this just a discussion that we need to ask somebody else for help with? Is this something that I have to let go of? And again, without knowing the issue, I can't speak to what side of the line
I was more thinking just in general about if, does it come home to help and you want that person to help?
I knew that was coming. I'm enabling my husband to not help when he comes home.
Something like that.
I totally get that. Right? And then my favorite is, I shouldn't have to ask.
Right.
That's fine, okay? I'm all about helping people get more of what they want. Okay? When the teen comes into my office, they don't want to work on the issues their parents want them there for, and so I say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to help you figure out how to get more of what you want from your parents. It's time for you to figure out how to get more of what you want from your husband. There are a lot of things that I'm not going to think to do when I get home, and if my wife asks me if in a certain way, or if she comes, fluttering her eyes and gives me a hug, oh, babe, can you? Yeah, of course I can, even if I don't want to. But if it's like, can you please just empty the dishwasher? I'm going, right? My first thought is like, I just worked a 60-hour week. Empty the dishwasher? If she says, hey, I've had the kid all week, can you watch her so I can go out on Friday? I'm going, I worked all week, why can't I go out with my friends? But if she says, babe, I appreciate you. And I know Fridays are our time together, but I really want to connect with the girls. Then, I don't want it, but I'm like, okay. And so sometimes we got to figure out how to get more of what we want in our marriage. And if there's no way to get it, we either ask for help or we let it go. Okay? And, that idea of I'm enabling my spouse to do something that I don't think is right, but isn't falling within that moral and value thing, that's you being a parent, no offense. You don't get to be your spouse's parent. And again, I fall victim to that. I have a very clear idea about how we're supposed to live our lives, what we're supposed to do each day, and it doesn't always match up. And you know what? Technically, yes, you're right. He should come home and he should help more, and he should do more dishes and cleaning and kid watching and everything else. But you see, that's something that you want, and it's something that you believe. He's coming from a different perspective. And that's really hard when you know that you're right, but nobody's right. Those moments are so difficult because you know that you're right and you're enabling. You're not enabling him. You're You're just not figuring out how to get what you want from him. You're not going to do it if you hang on to the resentments. Now, here's my issue with the forgiveness talk. It puts you in a righteous point of view. I'm so good, I'm forgiving you.
I feel like I feel it makes you feel more weak.
Or that, right? I keep having to forgive him.
Yeah.
And so I'm just getting walked all over. Can we just, stop worrying about forgiving? Let's stop having that talk. I think the forgiveness will be a product of healthy relationship to God. I think that when we're pursuing those morals and those values as a Christian, it's kind of like a byproduct. I can't help but have forgiveness in my heart. And that forgiveness brings me closer to God. And I might be the only one here, but for some reason, I haven't been that successful when I white knuckle it and try to forget, okay, come on, forgive this person, forgive this person, forgive this person. It just kind of happens when I get my heart straight. It's a byproduct of me getting my heart straight. Does that make sense? Anybody else? Yeah.
So how do I don't know how to word it. So I had a really hard time being a stay-at-home mom. I just didn't enjoy it, and that's normally people are like, I love being a stay-at-home mom, I love it.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be something that I wanted and would embrace. And so when it happened, I struggled. And so, but my husband's response was, well, this is what you wanted. This is what you chose. And we also had fertility issues, so I kind of was the one that was ashamed to, have the baby. So then when the baby came, it was kind of like, well, you wanted this.
Oh, that's hard.
And so it's not as bad anymore, but my kids are 5 and 6.
Okay.
So they're older now, but that it's still there.
Yeah.
If I say that I'm struggling or, they'll be like, well, it's what you wanted, so.
Yeah.
And I'm like.
So I wish I had some words that you could give him
Yeah.
to get his heart straight. I don't. I will say that is big. You're not alone. Okay, I have worked with so many couples with that same issue. Ask for help,
Yeah.
even if it's for a short period.
I figured that's where it was going,
Okay?
but
But here, let me give you something else, though. Okay, I speak often to people struggling with depression, anxiety, to parents who are struggling raising their children, and to addicts. I developed this thing I call the 6 pillars. I didn't develop it, I just organized it. So I call it the 6 pillars. It's the 6 pillars of your life. And the first one is mental health. Then we've got relationships, all your relationships. Then we've got fitness, health, nutrition. We've got spirituality, we've got hobbies, and we've got career/education. Okay? And all 6 pillars, they don't have to be equal, but you should be putting time, effort, and energy into all 6 pillars in a balanced way that fits your life. And so you're missing right now the career or education pillar because you made this choice to be a stay-at-home mom. And then on top of it, your husband, instead of being empathetic that you're missing this piece of you, is going, you chose it, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. But I'm going to tell you that finding balance in those 6 pillars is really important. It's like the baseline for addressing issues. Right? If I'm depressed or really struggling, I have got to make sure that I've got my pillars in line. And then I know where I'm at. And so it might be really small. I would say pursue that 6th pillar. Somehow, some way, regardless of your, I don't want to say that. Don't tell them who I am. Regardless of your husband. And then if you need to ask for help so that you can do it in a way that doesn't bring chaos to your home, ask for help while you're pursuing that 6th pillar that you're missing. Does that help?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, you guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Matt. Brandon, thank you. I mean, this was off the charts, incredible. We actually were supposed to have 20 minutes for just discussion at our table, but I just prayed and I felt that the words that you were pouring into this group and into the women was unbelievably valuable. And the whole time, I think I had whiplash because I was just like nodding to every point and at the same time convicted and hopeful because I know my marriage has struggled during this time. I know I'm not alone. And so thank you for this, and thank you for your time and pouring into this group. So ladies, I didn't leave any time because I wanted Brandon to come and just pour out this amazing